Astronomy in Reverse by Pansley. Chapter 24. This family I have found. Objectively, he knows that Avengers Tower is an incredible feat of modern architecture, but Bucky hardly pays the structure any attention as he and Steve step out of the elevator and onto the man's private floor. His heart is in his throat, but for the first time in months, it's not a bad thing. "Peter!" Steve calls out, breaking Bucky out of his thoughts. "Peanut! We're back!" They turn the corner where the kitchen and living room slot together and across the L-shaped sofa through a window that takes up the entire wall. Bucky sees him. There's a balcony outside the window that faces Central Park. Peter is there leaning over the railing, playing on a cell phone. His head whoops up when they turn the corner, and Bucky watches the surprise, and disbelief, and joy, and relief all across his face at once, mouth popping open, his wide eyes shining with tears. He trips over himself, bolting for the balcony door, not taking his eyes off Bucky, and promptly smacks face first into the clear glass beside the opening. Bucky winces at the loud slap the impact makes, jogging around the sofa to meet the kid halfway. "Jesus, Pete, that looked like it hurt. Are you Oh! He doesn't get to finish. "Dad!" Peter whimpers, suddenly lands onto him, arms tight around Bucky's neck. Bucky is quick to hold the boy around the middle to keep him up, hold him steady off the ground when he realizes something startling. Peter's feet are touching the floor. He jerks and pulls the boy back far enough to peer down and confirm his suspicions. Holy shit! The boy's still short for his age, but he's grown! He's grown so much, he has to be at least almost as tall as Tony now. 2, maybe even 3 inches taller than he was 4 months ago. "Peter, look at you." Peter grins at him. He's fuller, too. His shoulders aren't so narrow, not as bare-boned as he was the last time Bucky saw him, and his face. Bucky's eyes mist over as they search the kid's face, so intimately familiar and in some ways entirely new. It's Peter's face, but he's growing into his jawline, the shape of his brow. His complexion is healthier, revealing a splattering of freckles across his cheeks and the bridge of his nose that Bucky never noticed before. He has the same sunshine grin stretched across his handsome face, but the baby fat has melted from his cheeks, the dimple beside his lips more pronounced than it ever was. His eyes are the only thing about him that are the same, big and dark and brimmed with happy tears. Bucky cups his face and stares into them. He can't believe how much closer Peter is now, tall enough to smack his forehead against Bucky's shoulder when he pulls him back in for a hug. "I can't believe how much you've grown." Peter laughs and hugs him tight. "Welcome home, Dad!" Bucky can't help squeezing and rocking him a little side to side. His baby boy. He never has to miss another moment of his son's life for as long as he lives. Despite the rush of emotions overwhelming him, the relief of that thought reigns supreme. "I'm home, kiddo," he says, resting his temple to the crown of Peter's head. "For good." Bucky roams through the tower floor while Steve and Peter pack. It's too much space for the 2 of them. Would be too much for all 3 of them, even if Tony had allowed them to stay. Steve assures him their new place is a lot less daunting, and he'd be lying if he said he isn't anxious to see it. Part of it is that he's anxious to obey Tony's wishes and make himself scarce. And part of it is that he's deeply curious what Steve's idea of the perfect home for us, as he put it, looks like. The rest of him is just eager to be with his family in a place they can call their own. The floor Steve and Peter have stayed in for these last few months is beautiful and spacious and nicer than anything they could ever afford on their own, but it's not home. Not that Steve and Peter haven't clearly done their best to make it feel like it. Bucky can't help touring the place like it's the world's most comforting museum as Peter and Steve move from room to room, sorting things into boxes and suitcases. Little things to stand out to him, flooding his whole body with warmth. The wooden bird feeders Steve and Peter made together at Tony's lake mansion hanging out on the balcony. An easel in the living room, a canvas sitting atop it, displaying a half-finished painting of Central Park at sunset. Beside it, a cluttered desk covered in technological bits and bobs that remind Bucky of their tiny island counter in their old shithole apartment. How messy it would get whenever Peter worked on his web shooters. Clothes and books and fragments of Peter's homework are scattered across most surfaces. Bucky's eyes get misty when he realizes Peter's already in his junior year. How quickly things can change. He smiles, thinking back to Peter's freshman year graduation, how proud he had been that day, how much Peter has grown in every way since then. But, by far, his favorite part of the whole place is the fridge. He's sure it's well stocked with whatever ultra-nutrient-rich fertilizer Peter's clearly been fed since Bucky left, but that's not why he loves it. It's the outside that he can't get enough of. It tells the whole story. Everything he's missed, all the little things that have happened in his absence. The most obvious example is the photos, no doubt taken with the camera Steve bought for Peter back in Montana. There has to be at least a dozen of them. Steve standing at the stove, pensively staring down at a pot, black smoke wafting in his face, an apron that looks child-sized, stretching ridiculously across his massive chest. Tony in his workshop, hands blurred amid gesture, his mouth open and face bright like he's in the middle of a passionate speech. Peter lounging on the sofa, a goofy candid grin across his face, the photo clearly taken the moment he noticed the camera. Peter slouched over the dining table with an incredible case of bedhead. Peter and Ned playing video games on the floor, staring up at the TV with happy smiles. Steve passed out in a reclining chair, an open book draped across his face. Peter looking sheepish and a little sad outside of Midtown Tech, both hands gripping his backpack straps, his gaze averted. His first day of school, Bucky realizes. It couldn't have been taken more than a couple of weeks ago. And in the middle of them, like a centerpiece, the photo of Peter and Bucky that Sharon had taken of them back at Frank's. Bucky's cap pulled low over his face, hands shoved in the engine of a car, Peter leaning against the bumper, gazing up at him, affection beaming in his big dark eyes. Bucky's surprised to see it, after telling Peter he could only keep it if he hid it away. It looks pristine, well cared for. It makes his chest ache when he sees it. The first photo of the two of them ever taken. He hopes that soon Peter will have many more to add to his collection. The photos aren't the only things on display. There are trinkets, little hints of Peter and Steve's life together that soothe the ache resonating in his chest. A little note messily scribbled on a torn piece of notebook paper. Peter's boyish writing scrawling out, "Hey, Pops went to the movies with Ned and MJ. Be home by 10. Love you!" Bucky stares at it, his heart full. He wonders who MJ is, and when Peter started calling Steve Pops, maybe it was around the same time Steve started calling him Peanut. Part of Bucky is sad he missed it. The rest of him is just relieved to feel so much love between the two of them. There are birthday cards pinned up too. He doesn't feel ashamed about reading them. They are on display after all. Peter's birthday card to Steve is sincere and sweet and full of gratitude. His message short and to the point. "Happy birthday, Steve! I never know what to write in these things, but I love you and I'm grateful for all you do. To prove it, I promise to let you win one next time we play Mario Kart. It's a big sacrifice, but you deserve it. Love, Peter." Bucky chuckles despite having zero earthly idea what the hell Mario Kart is. He puts the card back and picks up the next one, a birthday card for Peter, but this one is from Tony. It doesn't surprise him that the card is more humorous than heartfelt, but in some ways it does. Tony choosing to make a joke instead of be brutally honest about his feelings seems right up his alley. And yet, if ever there was a valid excuse to let his walls down a bit and shamelessly admit that he cares, it feels like this would have been it. The card reads, "I survived another year and all I got was this lousy card," written above a drawing of a worn-down, ragged-looking cartoon bird. It's too mature for a kid's 16th birthday, but the message Tony wrote makes up for it. "Happy birthday, kid. Try not to get too hopped up on birthday cake tonight. The last thing you need is more sugar. I've got Star Trek The Next Generation queued up and a box of those mini sausage rolls with your name on it whenever you're ready. You know where I'll be. T.S." How like Tony to go out of his way to make a card for someone and then not hand it to them in person. At least Bucky's assuming it wasn't handed to Peter in person. The way it's written makes him think it was left out in plain sight, placed somewhere Peter stumbled upon it as if it appeared out of nowhere. And still he can feel the man's concern when he reads between the lines. It comforts him to know that Tony was still there for Peter, that learning about what Bucky had done and that Steve hid it from him didn't stop him from keeping his promise and being there when Peter needed him. He knows the boy would have been fine if it had only been him and Steve. But Peter adores Tony, and Bucky's grateful that he didn't have to say goodbye to two people he loves at the exact same time, both of them Bucky's doing. He puts the card back and eyes the last one, already suspecting what it will say, but opening it anyway. Steve's birthday card to Peter. His handmade, a little white card with a watercolor painting of Peter sitting on a windowsill, bathed in the orange light of sunset, face turned away to stare out the tower window. The caption at the bottom is written in thick black ink, Steve's neat penmanship a stark contrast to Peter's. Peter, Avengers Tower, July 23rd, 2017. Bucky traces the beautiful piece of art with his metal hand before flipping the card open. Inside it reads, Peter, you were an unexpected addition to our lives, but now that you're here, we could never imagine life without you. We're grateful that you were brought into this world and that we were lucky enough to become your parents. You have made both of us happier than you will ever know. Happy birthday. Love, Dad, and Pops. Bucky's breath catches in his throat. He reads it twice, again, then a fourth time. His eyes glaze over with tears. Steve! Of course he would sign a card for both of them, knowing Bucky would want him to without ever needing to ask. He gently pins the card back to its spot on the refrigerator door and takes one last look at the whole picture. The magnets pinning everything to the door are letters of the alphabet, and he realizes when he takes a step back that they all spell out different things. P-O-P-S holds up the photo of Steve at the stove. Z-Z-Z on the one of him sleeping in the recliner. C-U-T-E on the photo of Peter's outrageous bed. B-F-F on the photo of Peter and Ned. D-A-D and M-E on the photo of Bucky and Peter at Frank's dealership. And on the birthday cards underneath, spread out to hold up each card, the magnets spell out I-L-O-V-E-Y-O-U. He hears the gentle pitter-patter of bare feet on the smooth engineered floor before two scrawny arms wrap around his chest. Bucky smiles and holds his son's arms. You finished packing? No, Peter says. Just wanted to hug you. The boy nuzzles his face into Bucky's back. The moment hits him a little too abruptly. He really did it. He made it home to his family. He's okay, and Peter's okay, and Steve's okay, and they're here together, reunited at last. It feels unreal. He turns in Peter's arms so he can wrap him up in a proper hug, needing to ground himself, briefly overwhelmed. He's here, he reassures himself, squeezing the boy tighter. He's real. It's real. He's here. I'm home. I missed you, Peter says, muffled, his face smooshed against Bucky's collarbones. I missed you, too. Bucky rests his head on top of his son's, eyes slipping closed. You brought me home, kiddo, he says, confessing it like he's asking for forgiveness. Lots of you kept me going. You'll probably never know how much, but every time I started to doubt myself, I knew you were here waiting, thinking of me. He pulls away slightly, smooths some of the unruly hair from the boy's face. Peter looks up at him and smiles. He doesn't deserve it, but he finds the forgiveness he was hoping for when he looks into those eyes. I was always thinking of you, Dad, Peter says, not realizing that Bucky fully understands the weight of those words now, the significance of them. The most important thing in the entire world to Peter and Bucky both. That thing that made them a family. The fact that there was one person, one single person in this wide, crowded world who was thinking of them. He knows he doesn't need to, but he says it anyway. I'm sorry I had to leave, Peter. He gently squeezes the boy's shoulders, comforting, apologetic. I no one ever said it, but The words catch in his throat. He laughs, breathless, surprised when tears start running down his cheeks, hot enough to scald his skin. I'm so glad you followed me home that night. Peter's eyes brim with tears, like a biological reaction to his own. Bucky gently runs the knuckle of his forefinger across the boy's cheek to catch the first few tears as they begin to fall. He wipes his own face with the back of his metal hand, smiling in spite of the mess he's making.
I thought of you too,
he says when he's sure his voice won't crumble the moment he opens his mouth.
And I always have. You were in my heart from the moment we met, Peter. I was scared to get close to you because I think I knew even back then how much I would end up loving you. How badly I needed you.
He wonders if Peter knew too, deep down. If that gut feeling that told him Bucky was good and safe also told him how much Peter could help him. How important it is to have someone in your life that you would fight for, even with all the odds seem stacked against you. How each of us needs someone, even if it's only a single person, to hold on to care for us and to take care of, to think of us, to keep us from being alone. He wonders if the subconscious part of Peter that knew he needed Bucky knew that Bucky needed him too, even when Bucky himself didn't.
Bucky clears his throat with a soft laugh and says, You told me once that I was your hero for saving you that night.
He remembers how viscerally he had wanted to deny it back then, how deeply it cut to think a child as good and pure as Peter saw him as anything other than a monster. The guilt of feeling like he had pulled the wool over the boy's eyes without ever meaning to, almost as fierce as his determination to never let anyone harm this person who meant the world to him. His smile widens, his hand gently cupping the boy's head.
But from day one, Peter, even when I didn't know it, you were always the one who was saving me.
He presses their foreheads together, lets the tears fall freely.
Thank you for finding me.
Peter inhales a watery breath, rolls their foreheads together. His hands are still so small when they wrap around Bucky's wrists. It stuns him how hands that small can manage to hold up Bucky's entire world. You're still my hero, Dad, he says, his voice soft, but his tone firm, like he needs Bucky to believe it. Regardless of who saved you, you were kind enough to need me. He pulls away, smiling up at him like Bucky hung the stars in the sky. I'm really glad you and Steve became my dads.
We love you so much, Peter, Steve says suddenly, both of them turning to follow the sound of his voice. He smiles at them from the other side of the kitchen, leaning against the wall like he's been watching them for some time. I know I can speak for both of us when I tell you, you are easily the best thing the 21st century has produced so far.
Peter laughs, moving to grab some tissues to wipe his face. Bucky settles for the sleeve of his jacket, wiping his cheeks dry, and then noticing Peter waiting, smiling up at him softly.
Come on, kiddo,
he says, arm wrapping around the boy's shoulders.
Let's finish packing so we can all finally go home.
Bucky would never admit that he had doubts, but he's glad to be proven wrong when he sees their new apartment. Steve chose well. It's nowhere near as egregiously large as their private floor at the Avengers Tower, but it's the perfect size for them. A 2-story brownstone in Brooklyn, only a few blocks away from where Brooklyn ends and Queens begins. The neighborhood is quiet, well, as quiet as it gets in New York anyway. Certainly much quieter than their shithole apartment had been, the old rickety building placed smack dab on a major road. Their new apartment is modestly sized, 2 bedrooms plus a den that Bucky immediately knows Steve is hoping to turn into a painting studio. There's already furniture loaded into all the main rooms. Not much, but all the necessary things. Beds, a dining table and chairs, a sofa. It's bare bones, but Bucky's grateful for that in some ways. It means they can truly make it theirs together, the 3 of them.
How did you set this all up?
Bucky asks Steve, following the man inside with another load of boxes. They don't have much, but he's still surprised by how many boxes and bags they end up hauling from the tower. Steve huffs as he sets one of the larger boxes down. It's been in the works for several weeks now. I never intended for us to stay at the tower permanently, especially since tensions were high. Thankfully, this revamped Accord deal includes a decent pension, and you'd be surprised what kind of discounts people are willing to hand out to Captain America.
You're a national treasure, Steve.
Bucky laughs at the flat look the other man gives him.
I had the furniture ordered a few days ago,
Steve says, ignoring his comments. I was thinking that even if things didn't go well, Peter and I would still need somewhere to stay. That's why I didn't exactly go crazy with the shopping catalog.
I'm glad you didn't,
Bucky tells him, moving out of the way to let Peter inside, carrying way too many bags at once.
Kid, I told you not to overdo it.
I can
literally lift a bus, Dad!
That's not what I'm worried about. Your arms are so full you can't even see where you're going. You're just asking to fall down these stairs and break your neck. Pace yourself a little. The boxes aren't going anywhere.
I'm not going to fall! Peter shouts, already out the door to grab more bags from the rented truck.
Tell that to that face print you made on Tony's window back at the tower.
Bucky calls back, grinning when he hears Peter mutter grumpily to himself in response. He sets his own armful of boxes down and then notices Steve hasn't moved. He looks up, their eyes meeting, where Steve is lounging against the kitchen counter, watching him, a warm smile etched onto his face.
Like something you see, Rogers?
I do, he says. His voice is soft, fond. I like him a lot, in fact.
When did you get to be such a charmer? I distinctly remember that Steve Rogers was an awkward little nerd who couldn't flirt with someone to save his life.
Steve shrugs, grinning. Only because my heart was never in it. Seems to come much easier to me when it's you, Buck.
I'm flattered.
I'm just glad you're here, Steve confesses. I hoped you would be, of course. I planned for it. But knowing there was a chance you wouldn't be, it made it pretty hard to enjoy any of this. Now you're here and I'm so deliriously happy, I don't even know where to start.
How about the kitchen?
Bucky suggests, grinning at the surly look Steve gives him.
Come on, Stevie. Soon it'll sink in that you're truly stuck with me forever, and then you can move and be sappy all you want. Let's finish unloading the trunk so I can put our son to bed and fight you for the good side of the mattress.
Laughing, Steve shakes his head, but obeys, following Bucky out the front door to their new house. It takes a few weeks, but after days and days of arranging, rearranging, and rearranging, Bucky can finally say they've made their new home truly theirs. It's cozy, warm. There isn't a single piece of busted duct tape dumpster furniture in the whole apartment, though Bucky did take advantage of some nearby thrift stores, garage sales, and pawn shops to find homey secondhand things to dress the place up a little. There's a floorboard in the kitchen that creaks when he walks on it, and their front door squeaks a bit too loudly when it opens. But those are minor things, easy fixes. The plumbing and appliances work, and the walls are well insulated, not drafty or rotting on the inside. For the first couple of weeks, he and Peter spend most weekends touring the markets, finding little things to fill their new home with odds and ends that catch their attention. Steve, ever the artist, always comes up with some attractive way to incorporate them into the interior design, even when he shakes his head at the questionable choices. Why would you buy this? He asks, dumbstruck, turning over the small, bright gold lamp with its glass jade-gutted lampshade in his hands. It looks older than we are, Buck. Bucky shrugs.
Peter said it looked lonely on the shelf,
is all he says. Steve makes a face, earning a wide, devilish grin on Bucky's. Well, it can be his desk lamp, then, he says, sorting it into the Peter pile of their Sunday haul. It becomes a routine until there isn't a square inch in their new apartment that the three of them haven't personalized. Steve made the wise choice of using plants to break up the warm, earthy tones of most of their furniture with a pop of color, and it ends up with their living room looking quite jungle-like when all's said and done. It's homey, comforting. Bucky doesn't mind it at all. He's added a few things himself, little things, personal touches that he had been thinking of for months. The first was adding Becca's photo to the new collage they made on their fridge. In some ways, it had hurt to tell Peter about her, though he knows the boy would never blame him for what happened. She looked like you, the boy says, running his fingers along the edge of her photograph. She has your smile.
The more I remember about her, the more reminded I am of you,
Bucky confesses. Beside him, Steve wraps his arm around Bucky's waist and presses him in close, a tight side hug.
She was a troublemaker at times, but she was always such a good kid. Smart. Kind. You would have really liked her.
A small smile crosses the boy's face. Yeah, I bet I would have. She was always so protective of you, Steve says. His hand tightens on Bucky's hip. It was always so funny to see. You were already so tall and filled out when we were teens, and she was this little slip of a thing, shorter than even me. It didn't matter if someone messed with you, usually because they were messing with me and you stepped in. She'd act like she was 10 feet tall. Kid wasn't scared of anything.
She used to get so mad at us when we came home all beat up.
Bucky says, chuckling.
She had everybody fooled with that sweet little girl act. Guys in the army couldn't cuss someone out as well as my baby sister could.
I wonder where she learned it from. Steve deadpans. Bucky only smiles wider.
Becca's photo looks at home on their fridge. Steve hangs a photo of his mother, too, and in the center, Peter hangs a selfie of the three of them, taken on their first night in their new apartment, sitting on the sofa in their empty living room surrounded by boxes, side by side, and stuffing their face with pizza. Peter had whipped out his camera and taken the shot without a word, catching Bucky mid-bite of a slice of pizza. Steve half turned to face him, a soft smile on his face. Peter's grinning up at the camera, bright and a little mischievous. It's a good photo. The magnets holding it up spell out Family, and it makes Bucky's throat feel tight every time he sees it. In the living room, they dedicate the wall beside the TV for the rest of the family photos, hung in a mixture of mismatched frames. Peter hangs a photo of his mother and father, and one of him when he was younger with his aunt and uncle when he was so little Bucky's heart aches to look at him. Steve hangs a photo of the two of them from their army days, grinning like fools. Bucky beaming at Steve like the lovesick idiot he is. Bucky hangs a copy of the photo of him and his family that used to hang above their fireplace in his childhood home. The rest of the space is dedicated to new photos of the three of them. It fills up slowly like the rest of their home. Peter wastes no time in decorating his room to the nines with every geeky pop culture related thing he can find. It's such a source of pride to see his son at home in his own room, having a space all to himself, his own bed, a place that is truly his. Bucky's wanted to give him this almost since the day they met. Seeing Peter now, happy and comfortable and safe, hanging posters on his walls, stringing lights up above his bed, arranging his books and DVDs just so, a certain organized chaos. It calms Bucky somewhere deep in his psyche. It feels right. His and Steve's room is comfortable and cozy, if a little cramped. The huge bed is worth taking up most of the room for. Steve might not be the most frivolous spender, but he clearly didn't skimp on this purchase. Bucky lets him take over in the decorating department, and he's glad he did. Steve hangs plants in front of their window and paintings above and across from the bed, original works in beautiful pastel watercolors. A brass frame mirror somehow makes the room seem bigger than it is, and the white duvet on their bed and white curtains on the window makes it feel brighter, more filled with light. He even lets Bucky have the good side of the mattress. Bucky loves him with every beat of his heart. Steve was right. In the end, their new home is perfect for them. With their apartment fully moved into, Steve busy with his newfound Avengers responsibilities, and Peter halfway through his first semester of his junior year, Bucky finds himself with more time on his hands than he knows what to do with. He talks to T'Challa and Shuri now and then, taking advantage of Orby's communication abilities to video chat with the Wakandans from time to time. T'Challa even has his doctor make a referral for him to continue his therapy in New York, which Bucky appreciates. Peter is seeing a doctor too, supposedly started the same week Steve brought him back to New York, and between that, band practice, and the school decathlon, Bucky is eager for ways to fill his day while he waits for Steve and Peter to come home. He starts by shaving the impressive beard he grew while he was overseas, and while he's bent over the sink staring at his face in the mirror, a thought hits him, almost overpowering in its intensity. He reaches for the pair of scissors in his grooming kit without a second thought. When he steps out of the bathroom, dressed but still damp from his shower, Steve and Peter are making breakfast in the kitchen, making small talk about the busy Monday ahead of them. Peter notices him first and stops dead when he looks up and sees him. Holy shit! Dad! Steve turns around and Bucky watches his reaction carefully. His eyes widen. His mouth falls open in a silent gasp, hands falling away from the frying pan and spatula even holding. Buck? He breathes out, soft, speechless. Bucky smiles and runs his hand through his freshly cut hair, as short as he used to keep it back in the day. He wonders if he looks like the Bucky Steve remembers most. He's pretty sure he does, because Steve swallows thickly a lump caught in his throat and stares him down for a moment longer before he groans out, "Peter, go to school."
Peter looks between them, eyes wide, then abruptly drops his spoon into his half-finished bowl of cereal, throws his backpack on, and practically books it for the door.
Have a good day at school, kiddo.
Bucky calls, the air knocked from his lungs as Steve barrels into him, hands tight on his new short hair, and pulls him in for an almost violent kiss. Goodbye! Peter shouts, the door slamming loudly behind him, making Bucky laugh as Steve wrangles him down onto the couch. They somehow make it back to the bed. Half an hour later, Bucky grunts and rubs his now smooth cheek against Steve's chest, complaining,
"Now I need another shower, you punk."
Steve grunts, completely unapologetic. His hand trails up Bucky's spine and gently cards through his short hair. What made you want to cut it? Bucky hesitates, but isn't sure why. He knows Steve will understand, that the man will have no reason to stop him.
It felt something I needed to do, to move on.
His hand gently runs over Steve's bare chest, caressing his skin.
And I wanted to look presentable for my plans today.
Steve, as Bucky told himself he would be, was more than supportive of Bucky's plans. He never expected him to join the Avengers, and Bucky's grateful for that. They both know he would help if the situation arose and he was needed, but just the same, if that day never comes, Bucky is more than happy to live as though there isn't anything special about him at all. He pauses outside the door, forcing himself to take a deep breath. He doesn't know why he's anxious. He's done a lot worse and apologized to a lot more people than this, but he still feels tense with nerves. It takes him a moment to gather himself before he can push the door open. They're both standing there at the front desk. Sharon sees him first. She gasps like she's seen a ghost, elbows her husband sharply in the arm. Frank! Frank! Frank turns around, meets his gaze. For a moment, he looks completely livid. Bucky forces himself to stay put as the man half shouts, "Son of a bitch!" and stomps over to him, staring him down, his angry dark eyes boring holes into him. Bucky smiles in spite of himself.
"Hi, Frank. You've got some nerve."
The man seethes, practically hissing the words in his fury.
"Do you have any idea how dumb women will be?"
And then he surges forward and wraps him in a tight hug, the angriest hug Bucky's ever been given, and he laughs to stifle his sob and hugs the man back.
"I'm sorry,"
he says, patting the man firmly on the back.
"For all of it. I'm sorry for everything I put you through." "You shut up!"
Frank barks, pulling back, eyeing his face critically.
"You look good,"
he says after a moment, visibly relieved.
"God, you had us worried out of our minds, Jim. We thought the feds got you at this trial."
He looks sharply back at his wife as she steps closer, waiting for her turn to hug and scold Bucky in kind.
"Your boy. What happened to your boy? Is he here? Is he safe?" "Peter's fine,"
Bucky assures, heartbroken by the happy sob Sharon makes.
"He's at school right now. We have an apartment in Brooklyn near McCarran Park. He's taking band in school and he's so tall, Frank, you wouldn't recognize him." "I hardly even recognize you,"
Frank grunts, tugging on a lock of Bucky's short hair.
"Oh, Jim, you're worried or sick." "I can't tell you how sorry I am."
"I don't want to hear it," Frank says, gruff, leaving no room for argument.
"We're just glad you and your boy are alright. Fucking hell, Jim!"
Bucky grins and opens his arms for Sharon to squeeze him tightly in a hug. "We never believed those stories for a minute," she says to him sternly. "We've been waiting for you, Jim, darling. You are home now, aren't you? Now that this whole trial nonsense has been settled, you'll come back, won't you?"
"That's actually part of the reason I'm here," Bucky admits. "I was wondering how busy you are, if you still need some help around the shop."
Frank and Sharon look at each other, and then the man stares at him, his expression not giving a single thing away.
"When can you start?"
A routine settles between the three of them that comforts Bucky to his very core. It's domestic, peaceful. They make breakfast together most mornings, except for the ones where Peter has trouble pulling himself out of bed. Steve always takes it upon himself to intervene in those moments. Bucky's got him more than once sitting on Peter's bed, blasting terrible oldies music from his phone, smiling as the boy groans and buries his head beneath his pillow. God, he loves them so much he can hardly stand it. Steve does most of his Avengers business in the afternoons, so Bucky and Peter usually leave together in the mornings. They walk to the station together, just like they used to, talking and making each other laugh until they go their separate ways to school and work, respectively. Bucky usually has the house to himself when he gets home. Sometimes Steve isn't needed at the tower, and they'll steal a quiet moment to themselves before Peter returns from school or his extracurricular activities, taking advantage of the brief window of privacy. Sometimes Peter doesn't come home until late, spending time with his friends or going to the tower to see Tony, though he tries to be home for dinner most nights at the very least. They implemented a no patrolling until after dinner rule, so unless the boys made plans to eat elsewhere, he at the very least graces them with his presence long enough to eat something before taking off again. Bucky tries not to feel lonely about it. He's glad Peter is getting out a bit more, truly he is. And it's hard to feel lonesome when Steve seems riveted to his side, as though he's bent on making up for all of their lost time. And really, Bucky knows he's being a tad unreasonable. Peter isn't spending that much time away from home. He's home by the evenings, and unless patrolling runs late for some reason, he's usually up to spending some time with them before bed, curling up on the couch and watching a movie or an episode of a show with them, or sometimes a game, or they'll make hot chocolate or tea and sit and talk about their day. And Peter's home most weekends, especially as the last tendrils of summer give way to fall. On the rainy days, the slow, quiet mornings when there's no school or work or Avengers business to concern themselves with, they'll sit on the couch, Peter lounging against his side, seemingly content to curl up against him and never move. Bucky knows his boy is growing up and these moments may be fewer and farther between, but God if he doesn't plan to soak up every second of it that he can get. Those days are by far Bucky's favorite. The slow days when it's just the three of them, happy and at home together, warm and safe where they belong. They're better than anything he ever thought he would deserve. His chest feels like it might crack open, trying to contain all the love he feels on days like that. They're nearly perfect. Nearly. It's hard to think of family and not think of Tony, no matter how hard he tries. Is something he's been able to discuss with his doctor in his therapy sessions. The guilt, the desire to make it all right, to tell Tony how utterly devastatingly sorry he is. His doctor lets him vent, but gently reassures him that some things are just out of our control, no matter how desperately we wish otherwise. He knows he can't make things right between them, despite how badly he wants to. Tony has every right to keep his distance. He still spends time with Peter, still invites him to the tower, though he fully keeps his distance from Steve, and even more so from Bucky. Bucky can tell that Peter is hurt by the rift between them, that he wants things to go back to normal, but whenever Bucky tries to broach the subject, Peter just smiles and shakes his head, tells him it's all right, that he has faith Mr. Stark will forgive him, but if he doesn't, that it's okay. They're still a family, and that won't ever change. He's right. Bucky knows he is. If Tony can't ever forgive him, it won't change the fact that Bucky has finally found his home, a family he loves with all of his heart. It hurts to think they can never go back to the way things were. But that's not up to him, and he has to live with that. So he makes his peace with Tony's decision and the man's feelings for him, thanks to Peter's gentle guidance. And then almost that very same night, there's a brisk knock at the door. Bucky isn't sure who to expect when he opens it, but it sure as hell isn't Tony Barnes, Tony says. He's dressed in a suit, hands stuffed in his pockets. His expression is hidden away behind those same dark sunglasses, except for the tightness in his jaw. Bucky gapes at him, speechless and stunned. He doesn't know where to begin. Then the man sighs, removes his sunglasses, folds them, and says, "So, it turns out resentment is corrosive, and I hate it." Something catches in Bucky's throat. Tony. The man looks at him, their eyes meeting. Bucky wants to apologize, to thank him, to somehow make the other man understand what this friendship means to him, what an impact he's had on their family. But he's not sure where to start. When he opens his mouth, the only thing that comes out is, "I'm really glad you're here." Tony lifts an eyebrow at him, and the slight quirk of his lips tells Bucky that this isn't the right time to pour his heart out, that that's not why Tony's here, and maybe he just isn't ready to hear it. So Bucky opens the door wider and steps aside. "Coming in? We've got pizza on the way, and Empire Strikes Back is about to start." Tony shakes his head at him, but steps inside without complaint. Someone should tell your kid that they've made literally thousands of other movies since 1983. Well, almost without complaint, anyway.